Tonight, Iran strikes back, but things appear to be cooling off, at least for the moment. Just hours after the Iranians bombed a U.S. base in Iraq, President Trump addressing the nation about the situation. Believe it or not, it doesn't look like he made things worse. Then all the president's men. We know the so-called adults in the room are all long gone. So now the president, he's relying on lots of outside advisors like talking heads on Fox News. We're going to discuss how frankly worrisome it all is. Also, our legal panel joins us to discuss a slew of legal stories getting headlines, including the start of the Harvey Weinstein trial for sex crimes and also the arrest made in the case of the Connecticut mom who's been missing for nearly 8 months. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French, and thank you for joining us this Wednesday. And we start tonight with Iran and the aftermath of the U.S. drone strike that killed top Iranian General Qasem Soleimani last week. As you know, last evening, Iran, they retaliated by launching missiles at U.S. bases in Iraq. But thankfully, no one was hurt. Multiple reports saying the Pentagon was expecting an attack in that country at those bases. I'm going to read from a piece in the Washington Post. Quote, U.S. officials said they knew by Tuesday afternoon that Iran intended to strike at American targets in Iraq. Although it was not immediately clear exactly which they would choose, the early warning came from intelligence sources as well as communications from Iraq that conveyed Iran's intentions to launch the strike. Now, that gave the bases enough time to hunker down and order everyone into both secure bunkers and to don protective gear. Plus, CNN's reporting that the Iranians may have intentionally tried to avoid hitting people. Now, late this morning, President Trump, he spoke about the situation.
Iran appears to be standing down, which is a good thing for all parties concerned and a very good thing for the world.
Trump did not say a word about retaliating militarily, but he did announce new economic punishments.
As we continue to evaluate options in response to Iranian aggression, the United States will immediately impose additional punishing economic sanctions on the Iranian regime. These powerful sanctions will remain until Iran changes its behavior.
And now, even hawks in the Republican Party who have been in lockstep with the president, they are happy that things have cooled off. Lawmakers like Lindsey Graham, Liz Cheney, they're saying they will not push the president to escalate the conflict with Iran. So, I suspect, like many of you, and this is my 2 cents here, that following this president's daily fiascos ranging from the cringeworthy to the unlawful, we suffer a sort of collective emotional whiplash when coupled with the bizarro new phenomenon of alternative facts. Up becomes down, vice versa. By the time the latest lie is exposed, more often than not, we move on to the next scandal. It has become an awful daily regimen of rinse and repeat. But if at our national peril we equalize all these obscenities, we're going to be missing, in my opinion, the greatest fundamental transferal of party to a single branch of government that I've seen in my lifetime. So tonight, I want to focus on just 2 things. They're 2 big things, I grant you, but 2 things nonetheless. War and impeachment. But let's begin with Iran. From multiple reports, Trump only responded with the order to kill General Soleimani after he heard conservative voices on, you can guess the channel, saying his prior responses to Iran made him look weak. And seeing the images of the protests at the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, he openly worried that it could be his Benghazi. Only then did he reverse field and order the assassination. The decision stunned his military advisors. Now, to be clear, Soleimani, I think, was a legitimate target. He was an awful guy, and he had an equally awful record. But if as today that is the morphing rationale for taking him out here, then if that's the new standard, why haven't we taken out Assad or Kim Jong-un? No. Our president said when he did this, he ordered the missile strikes on Iraqi soil because the general posed, and I'm quoting him directly, an imminent threat. Here is where Trump and his friends always step in. They could have just said it's because they believed it was the right thing to do. But no. Days later, they still produced Zippo in terms of evidence that such an imminent threat existed, and they made the decision, by the way, without notifying the Gang of Eight. That's the bipartisan leadership group in the House and Senate. I'm talking about some vote here. No. Bring them in a room like they always have, the leaders in the House and the Senate, leadership in the intel, and say, this is what we're doing, heads up. You bring them on board here. Not only did the president not do that, but he didn't even notify a single ally. And the consequence? For Christ's sakes, even the Israelis and the Saudis, Iran's two most sworn enemies, they wanted no connection to our actions the day after. And you can understand why. To quote Philip Stevens from the Financial Times, looking for a framework of Trump's foreign policy is like searching for symmetrical patterns in a bowl of spaghetti. He's right. Trump has a habit of coming up with fixes for problems that don't exist. He pulled us out of the Paris Climate Accord. Why? He pulled us out of a functioning Iran nuclear accord. I think it was just because Obama did it. He also pulled our troops out of Syria. We know what that led to, and the list, it goes on and on. He also hasn't exactly been helpful, not just on Twitter, but when he gets in front of the camera and says, I'm the chosen one, and I'm also the quote-unquote king of Israel. Those his words. Any adults in the room who attempted to impose reason, they've been shown the door. Only sycophants remain, who range from the uninformed to the timid to the scariest charlatans, those the raptures led by Pompeo and Pence, who believe a war with Iran would somehow equate to a religious crusade. I kid you not. Mattis, he gave a frightening glimpse before he left to what working with Trump was like. He, quote, found the president to be of limited cognitive ability and of generally dubious character. I want you to think about that. That the words of General Mattis. Let that sink in. Now, we all know we have no broader strategy here. We're making this stuff up on the fly. Trump, bereft of intellectual curiosity, proudly claims the only advice he needs is his own, and he acts on his gut. That gut, it's driven by bruised ego, talking heads on Fox News, political agendas, perceived slights, and anything that will change the subject from impeachment. Why it isn't in our nation's best interest? Well, America, we are less secure. Our enemies like Iran and Russia, they're more influential on the global stage, and we have retreated as a country. But when we ask why, we are to take Trump at his word. He has his reasons. Okay. And then we go to impeachment, where Mitch McConnell says he wants to push forward with a Senate impeachment trial without witnesses, despite the fact that John Bolton, just this week, says he would testify if subpoenaed. So let's consider this. I've heard no one, not one Republican, defend the president's actions if, in fact, there was a quid pro quo with Ukraine. You only get the aid here if you do me a political favor and come up with an investigation, whether it's true or not doesn't matter, against a political opponent he anticipates on having this fall. No Republican has defended the action. I won't bore you with all the sound bites of during the Clinton impeachment era what the likes of Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham said then, because there's collective amnesia for an entire political party. But who is this president, or any president for that matter, to say that we the people, despite 3/4 of us in recent polling saying we want to hear from witnesses, don't get to? Who is the president to decide, as the subject of the inquiry, who is and is not allowed to talk? What evidence we the people get to see to decide if a high crime and a misdemeanor was committed? Who is this president, of all people, with a casual association with the truth, let alone the law? Who is he who has said on the record that he is above the law? He can shoot someone, in his words, on Fifth Avenue and they can do nothing about it. He, the same person, believes the Justice Department works for him. How is that person the decider about what we, the public, get to see and hear? So bringing it full circle to Iran, how have we gotten to a point where, of all people, this man gets to decide when we go to war, on what terms and what evidence and what strategy and what endgame, and how he gets to be judged on what facts and what testimony? How have we gotten to a point in this country where that somehow is okay, especially for that guy? Our next segment. It reminds me of an old saying. You can tell a lot about a person by who he or she surrounds himself with. With President Trump, that is saying something spot on. We'll explain after the break.